Good afternoon, Western Washington, and happy Monday. I'm Matthew Fab with Western Washington Weather, and we've got a lot to talk about today as we have an offshore flow event coming up here that's going to bring hot temperatures, dry conditions, and some strong gap winds to parts of the area with some high fire danger expected. So we're going to dive right into that here, but first let's take a look at the satellite imagery. You can see our system has moved out. You can see some of those clouds lingering off to the east over parts of eastern Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And then you can see the Puget Sound area mostly clear today with some areas of scattered clouds north of Seattle, but overall very nice and clear day across the region. Taking a look at the National Weather Service Seattle map here, you can see a red flag warning is in effect for most of western Washington. You can see how it does not include some of these areas very close to Puget Sound, but mainly I-5 and eastward there, up into the Cascades where that fire danger is quite high. So what is that for? That is 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Tuesday. The fire weather watch is no longer in effect, so it's just this red flag warning. Winds are east winds 15 to 30 miles per hour with local gusts up to 45 miles per hour, and we'll look at where that is in just a moment. Relative humidity as low as 25 to 30% across the region. And some impacts here. A combination of moderate breezes, low relative humidity, and warm temperatures can contribute to rapid rates of spread and downwind spotting on existing fires. And if another fire were to begin, air quality may diminish in the surrounding area in addition to these impacts already listed. And then additional details here. Winds will be greatest along the gaps in the Cascades, along the I-90 and US 2 corridors, as well as around Enumclaw and in the Cowlitz Valley. So that is those are the areas we need to watch very closely. So taking a look at the overall pattern, we'll get to the winds in just a moment. You can see we have a ridge building to the north of us today. That goes into tomorrow. That helps influence that offshore flow. Then you can see we have subtle ridging continuing through the week into Wednesday and Thursday. Then as we go into Friday, that ridging starts to break down and push off to the east as we get some troughing moving toward the area towards Saturday. And that is indicating the potential start of a cooler and maybe wetter pattern going into next week. So we have to watch that closely as well. Taking a look at the precipitation forecast, you can see we remain dry all the way through Tuesday. Then Wednesday, we have a dying front there that dies right off the coast. Then Thursday, we still are dry. And then Friday as well, we are dry. Going into Saturday, you can see by mid-afternoon Saturday, some rain on the coast. That moves into the lowlands by Saturday night. And then we likely get a nice round of rain across the region going into Sunday morning. That continues through midday Sunday, maybe a convergence zone signature there, and then some of those showers end by the time we get to Monday morning. But then we do have potential for some more systems moving toward the area as we go into next week even further. So taking a look at the pressure forecast here, this is showing why we have those that offshore flow. We have lower pressure over the part over western Washington than in eastern Washington. That creates a pressure difference across the Cascades that you can see right here, and that is what pulls the winds. Essentially, the air is being sucked out of eastern Washington through the gaps in the Cascades, including the Columbia River Gorge, and is being pulled out to sea. And that is basically what offshore flow is. So taking a look at these gusts here, you can see where those gaps are in the Cascades. This is the European model, so we're not looking at the highest resolution forecast here, but you can see how it paints that area around I-90 with those strongest gusts up toward 45 to 50 miles per hour. Same thing there along parts of the Columbia River Gorge, and then to a lesser extent along US 2. Now, something we can take a look at here is 100-meter wind speeds, and this is going to show us why we have that offshore flow. So you can see as we go through today, that offshore flow starts to strengthen, and then as we go into tomorrow, you can see those areas where that offshore flow, you just have it just pulling the air right out of western Washington, right out through western Washington and out to sea. That's the offshore flow. It accelerates over the mountains as it moves out of the area. So taking a look at a higher resolution couple of forecasts here, we have the NAM model on the left and the high resolution rapid refresh model on the right. So the NAM model shows that area around I-90 gusting 45 to 50 miles per hour. You can see 46 miles per hour in Portland there on the NAM because of the Columbia River Gorge. And then the Cowlitz County and Lewis County areas there with the gap. You can see how Mount Rainier creates this triangle-shaped area of calm that includes parts of Tacoma up toward Federal Way, and then you have that line between Federal Way and SeaTac. This is usually how it goes with these events, where you get those stronger winds. And then you also have some strong offshore winds for the Long Beach Peninsula and parts of Astoria, Northwest Oregon there as well. And then you can see up and down the spine of the Cascades, gusts 35 to 45 miles per hour. That's why that red flag warning is in effect, and that's why there could be some pretty big spread on any existing fires. as we have the east winds, especially if those fires are at or west of the Cascade Crest. And then you can see on the high resolution rapid refresh model here on the right, very similar things with those winds being strongest right along the mountains and then along the I-90 corridor there with gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour, including Snoqualmie Pass and North Bend. And then the other thing that's going to happen here, and we'll take a look at this in just a moment, even if you are a little bit removed from some of those gusts, so you may only have offshore gusts of 20 to 25 miles per hour, you may still have a few down tree branches or something like that, but you'll definitely experience the hot temperatures. So taking a look at this right here, this is the high resolution rapid refresh model, and you can see we're starting this at midnight Tuesday. So you go to 1, 2, 3 a.m. You can see by 4 a.m. you have these areas that are exposed to the gaps that are already getting a little bit warmer. As we go to 7, 8, 9 a.m. there, by 9 a.m. you can see it's 61 in Tacoma but 70 in Renton, and that is because of this offshore flow. Going into the midday hours here, by noon you have high temperatures already. You can see Seattle at 84 degrees with that offshore flow. It's downslope winds. It heats up the area around it. And then you can see where you're not as exposed to that offshore flow, you have cooler temperatures. So it's 80 in Tacoma. At the same time, it's 86 up there in Renton with that offshore flow component there. Then as we go later into the day, you can see it's just going to get hot across the entire region. We may be pushing some September records here in terms of some daily records, maybe even a monthly record for a location or two in terms of especially how hot it is versus the next day. So we may have some big changes here. But some areas that aren't usually that warm are going to get really hot with this offshore flow. Specifically here, look at Whidbey Island, 87 degrees at NAS Whidbey. That is pretty extraordinary, especially for September. You can see the high resolution rapid refresh model shows 94 as a high in Tacoma, 90 in Bremerton, 91 in Seattle, 89 in Everett, 92 in Arlington, 88 in Bellingham, 90 there in Abbotsford, BC. And then you can see as we go further south, you can see 93 in Olympia, 92 in Chehalis, 90 in Portland, and then look at some of the Willamette Valley, 96 degrees there in Salem. And even out on the coast there, you can see some pretty warm highs, 83 in Hoquiam, 81 at Quileute Airport, and even in the upper 70s for parts of the ocean beaches. And then as we go into the evening hours, we do start to cool down relatively quickly by the time we get to 8 to 9 p.m. But you can see even by 10 p.m., some areas exposed to that offshore flow, especially areas around Seattle and North Bend, will remain in the mid to upper 70s and will eventually cool off, only getting below 65 by 2 to 3 a.m. as the flow switches and we turn back on shore. So by the time we get to 5 a.m. Wednesday, some areas remain in the low to mid 60s. So overall, a very hot day expected across parts of western Washington with this offshore flow. Now taking a look at the humidity as well, I wanted to point this out real quick, that as we go through the day, you can see that offshore flow is not only hot, but it's very dry. Take a look at these humidity values across parts of the Puget Sound area. 20%, some areas down to 15%. You can see 20% in Seattle and Everett, and then 25% up there in Bellingham. These values mean that basically it's extremely, extremely dry and additionally very hot. So any fires that are started or that are existing will spread, will have ample reason to spread because of this very dry air mass that we'll have in place here just for the day. You can see 16% humidity in the Puget Sound area, especially you see that in Olympia and Tacoma. That is kind of extraordinary to see in September. And then even as you go down into the Willamette Valley too, you can see even potentially some single-digit humidity there south of Portland. So overall, extremely dry and hot tomorrow. Dangerous conditions for fires, so that is something we need to watch very closely. Looking at the overall temperatures here, you can see Monday still on the cool side, highs in the upper 60s to low 70s across the region. You got that hot air on Tuesday with the offshore flow there. You can see that showing up pretty well in the National Blended models. But we crash back down Wednesday, relatively speaking. Highs from Seattle northward in the low to mid 70s, Seattle south in the upper 70s. And then you can see on the coast back down to the 60s. Same thing on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Start to cool down a bit on Saturday with some of those clouds and rain moving in. Highs staying in the upper 60s to low 70s, mid 60s on the coast. And we'll stay about that as we go into Sunday as well. We could be cooler on Sunday, maybe back to the mid 60s. So we'll see how it plays out over the next few days. But the thing to know is that Tuesday is going to be very hot with that offshore flow. So taking a look at the fires, you can see this pink is the red flag warning that's in effect across the region. And you can see that some of these fires, most of the big ones, are not in the area with the red flag warning. But that doesn't mean they won't be impacted by some of those winds, especially the Labor Mountain fire and the Wildcat fire, which are going to be exposed to a lot of offshore flow. Wouldn't be surprised to see some growth on the Bear Gulch and Tunnel Creek fires as well, in addition to the Lower Sugarloaf fire here, which may have some growth to the west as well. So we'll have to watch very closely what happens with these fires, especially Labor Mountain and Wildcat, as they are pushed to the west with that offshore flow. So stay tuned for more information on that. And then taking a look at the smoke itself, there may not be all that much, but if we have any new fire activity, then the model has to kind of factor it in, and it may not be factoring all of that in right now. So you see as we go through tonight, you get some of that smoke coming off the Lower Sugarloaf fire blowing out toward Puget Sound. A little bit of smoke aloft, but nothing extraordinary. And then you can see how this offshore flow kicks in and the fire smoke just pushes off this way to the northwest, but there's not that much fire activity, and hopefully that is because some of the western side there of the Lower Sugarloaf fire has been getting some fire lines built and stuff like that, and it may not be predicting that much fire growth, which is good to see. Taking a look at the surface smoke here, and you can see you get a little bit of surface smoke blowing toward the Puget Sound area coming off these fires, but it doesn't result in too much of a degradation of air quality. But you can see as that offshore flow kicks in Tuesday morning, we do get some light concentrations of surface smoke, especially from Seattle up toward Mount Vernon, and then a little bit further northward going into Tuesday evening. And that continues a little bit into early Wednesday morning, but then it should clear out pretty well by the day, during the day Wednesday there. And then taking a look at air quality real quick, that system that moved through yesterday, while it didn't produce that much in the way of rain across western Washington, it really did clean out our air, bringing in a lot of fresh air off the Pacific Ocean. And you can see even around some of the fires, air quality is pretty good. This is the best we've been doing here across Washington in a few weeks. You can see even northeast Washington, where you're having a ton of fires up there, the air quality is only in the moderate category. So that's good to see. I expect this will get worse over the next couple days, but it's nice to see how clean the air is right now after that system. And then this is the European model ensemble forecast, kind of showing us the trend here. Look at how that offshore flow just completely dominates the forecast there on Tuesday. 88 degrees is the ensemble average for SeaTac, so it may be higher than that. You may be reaching 90, 92 degrees. And then you can see how as soon as that offshore flow is cut off, the temperatures plummet back to normal or even below normal. You can see their highs back down to the mid-70s on Wednesday, and then we stay in the 70s, maybe some upper 60s into the weekend. And then off into the extended forecast, you can see we get cooler with the potential for a cooler and rainier pattern going toward the end of September. You can see those highs dropping into the mid-60s, and that's kind of what we're looking at there. But again, just look at the contrast between when you don't have offshore flow and when you do. Extreme difference in temperatures, and that just really shows how powerful some of that offshore flow can be. Just wanted to point out as well, no more sale on the Western Washington Weather merch store, but we have a lot of cool stuff going on. You got some hats, aprons, tote bags, some mugs, and water bottles. Go check that out. The link is in the description below. It's a pretty cool bunch of stuff going on here, so you can check that out in the description. And then you can also find in the description the Western Washington Weather Facebook group and my Twitter and Blue Sky accounts. And additionally, please subscribe to the channel. It's great to see the channel continue growing. And if you want to, you can monetarily support the channel by dropping a super comment in here below. And that allows you to donate some money to the channel so I can elevate the product that I'm giving you guys. So thank you all very much for watching. Check out all the stuff in the description below, including the merch store, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for more information on the offshore flow event and the temperatures and everything that we could be seeing tomorrow, including the dangerous fire weather. And stay tuned for the next briefing, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.